Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Artner Live with special effects and rainbows. This is a special edition of Artner Live because this is the last episode of the virtual book tour for The Dark Matter of Mona Starr. I know, it's very sad, but also good because we've made it. This has been the longest 8 weeks of my life. Okay, I gotta put this down because I'm having a little too much fun. You can tell I've been playing with my flag lately. Yes, so I was saying, welcome to this final episode of my 8-week virtual book tour for this new graphic novel of mine, which is called The Dark Matter of Mona Starr. In case you haven't heard me talk about her before, she's a pretty nice little graphic novel. Oh, I can flip. About dealing with depression and anxiety and uncertainty. So basically about being a person right now. So I spent the past, 5 years working on this little book baby. So it's strange to have her launch in the world at this time, but having these videos with you guys has been really fun and has forced me to, I don't know, find some joy in the situation instead of just feeling really depressed. This event is replacing what would have been an appearance at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. Oh, decaf! I was so excited about going and hanging out with everybody, but hopefully next year we can hang out together. So thank you all for joining me today. This episode of Artner Live is all about Sketchbook Dare drawing. So you can tune in here I'm live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. Here are the addresses in case you want to hop over to one of the other ones. So this is where you can find me. Each week I've been learning a little bit more. So it's been, I feel like I got the quality and sound pretty good. So, okay. Let me give you a brief overview of what to expect in today's video, besides rainbows and perhaps a cat cameo. I'm going to be sharing 4 basic things. First, I'm going to give you a bit of backstory about my experience with sketchbooks and my lifelong obsession. Then second, I'm going to demonstrate a few, maybe, 2 or 3 of drawing activities in the book. Then third thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share a handful of other prompts that you could do at home because I don't have time to draw through everything because this is only an hour. And then fourth, I'm going to give you some advice for maintaining your own sketchbook practice. And the reason that I think it's important to talk about sketchbooks on my book tour for the graphic novel, because Sketchbook Dares came out a couple years ago. She's my last book baby. And I think it's important to share because all of my books model healing through creativity. So in my first book, Page by Page, Paige works in a sketchbook because she's just like me. I know, a redhead from Virginia who moved to New York because not good at making things up. So her story is about working in a sketchbook to learn how to help you come out of your shell as an introvert. And then Will, she's less of a visual artist. She's more of an industrial designer type. She's like my steam-powered tomboy side of my personality. So she makes lamps out of recycled and upcycled materials. So she's more of a lighting designer. And then Mona, of course, she's more of a writer. So she does like journaling and she does do visual art. Let me pull up the page where Mona is doing some creative art therapy, tearing things up, very helpful. So all of my books are really about encouraging people to use art or, whatever medium it might be, whether it's musical, visual, movement, culinary, whatever it is, use those outlets to help you de-stress and help you get stuff out and help you express yourself. So, let's see. Sorry, I'm a little nervous today. Okay, so first thing I'm going to dive into is I'm going to share a little bit about my backstory of making sketchbooks. And for that, I always like to start with sharing a little time-lapse video showing my sketchbook project. What's my sketchbook project, you might say? Well, back in 2000, let's see, I'll angle this way. Back 2002 to 2000, I don't know, 6, I guess it was, or maybe 2001 to 2005, whatever it was, early 2000s, I did a project where I only worked in sketchbooks for 4 years. And what I did is that each year I gave myself a quota that I had to fill 7 pages every 2 weeks. So it averaged out to a page every other day. And the reason I started this project, it was supposed to be 1 year and I got carried away, was because I found that I wasn't making art for myself anymore. When you're young, you make art just for, you know, what you want to make because no one is like telling you what to do. But as I got older, I stopped doing art just for me, and I found that I was doing art that was more about projects or other people or serving like a function or for a class. And so that's why I thought, you know what, I'm going to start working in a sketchbook because I want to reconnect with my passion for creativity and also just use it to work in a regular outlet in my everyday life. So instead of wondering if I'm going to make something, it's more like, oh, now we're going to make something because it's just woven into my everyday schedule. Because I always thought, oh, Rory, gonna come up here? Because I always thought, like, I'm not a real artist because real artists have that desire to create. Like, I must create or I will die. I was like, well, I'm not like that, so I must not be a real artist. I want to have that hunger, that like the ideas, like being able to come in real easily. And so in my sketchbooks, I drew about everything from when I was inspired, you know, I'll draw about that. And if I'm not inspired, because sometimes, like right now, maybe your art supplies are gathering dust because you're not feeling inspired, and that's okay. So I'm going to share a quick little, see if I can to share my screen. Oh, I'm doing new things. Entire screen. Okay. Am I sharing the screen? Share your screen. Your entire screen. Shoot. Application window. Oh, hey, I'm figuring it out. Okay. So this is a time lapse of flipping through 4 years worth of sketchbooks in 90 seconds. And so I like to show this when I do school visits because it shows that not every page is a masterpiece. The point of a sketchbook is just to have a container to spit out a lot of different ideas. So I tried to do as many different styles and formats and mediums and types of ideas as I could. So if I finished a book, I would always draw a scene from the book, or those are ideas for like murals and lessons and projects. So it's part scheming, part idea book, part scrapbook, part dream journal, part experimentation playground, part journal. See, some of the pages are even just text. So to me, it's less about being consistent, and it's more about experimentation and just putting something on the page, because it also reminds you that done is better than perfect. And if you're an obsessive artist, like I'm a little bit obsessive, the sketchbook forced me to just do each page in just one sitting, and I couldn't over analyze it. Because also, it's just a sketchbook. It takes the expectations off that we put on ourselves, that we have to make something that's like go in a gallery or that will sell, because it's purely process-based. So I think it really helps you develop a good relationship with your genius to get in the habit of just filling something on the page, because also the empty page is pretty terrifying when you're facing it by yourself. Okay, I'm gonna exit out of there. And we're back to me. Okay. And hopefully I'm not still sharing my screen. Process-based. So I think it really helps you develop a good relationship with your genius to get in the habit of just Sorry, I'm figuring out the multiple streams. Hopefully I am not sharing my screen anymore. Great, I'm gonna keep going. And Larkin, please text me if I'm still sharing my screen. Okay, so with my sketchbooks, this was actually how I first started self-publishing, was I shared little baby versions of my sketchbook. So to me, this actually working in a sketchbook was my very first stepping stone to graphic novels. Because of course I learned later that the different scenes that I was drawing about with myself as a character were actually scenes from stories. What? But that's a whole other conversation. Okay, so let me share why I think sketchbooks are awesome. I feel like I've already gushed a little bit, but I'll get into even more. Sorry, my poster it's a little smudge. I need to fix that part. So I love sketchbooks because they're portable, which in normal life circumstances is a good thing when you are leaving the house. So you can take them with you, because it is like having a little friend, especially if you suffer from like some social anxiety. It's almost like a little security blanket. It's very low pressure because no one expects a masterpiece out of a sketchbook. I feel like it gives you, it's the bar is sort of set low. And also because if you have a lot of drawings in there, if there's one bad drawing, it sort of gets like, it's the overall effect of the artwork. So it takes the pressure off of each piece to stand alone, and oh, cat. Rory's joining us. Sketchbooks do lead to results. They're tried and true. Artists have used them forever because it does clear out the cobwebs between your head and your hands that can get in the way. The idea is getting out like as you intend them. They fit into real life because each sketchbook page, I don't know, I wouldn't spend that long on, maybe like a half hour to like maybe 3 hours. So it's a lot easier to just crank out a quick drawing rather than if you're using a medium that maybe is a lot more complicated. So, let's say you're more of a sculptor, there's a lot more like setup and materials. And so, sketchbook drawing, you can just like squeeze it in here and there in the little cracks and crevices where you have time. And they do make you daring because the blank page really is intimidating. And to do anything on the blank page, it takes courage, because if you start it and you like it, then you're scared to mess it up. But if you start it and you don't like it, then you're like, don't want to finish it. So either way, it's hard to do anything. So that's why just getting through like a page and then another page and another one, you do build confidence. Like, well, that one didn't explode in my face, so maybe I'll, try something new on this next page. Okay, when it comes to how I like to do a sketchbook, you might have noticed in the video that I don't always draw the same style stuff. I find that I draw like I categorize it in 4 different realms here. This is from the opening of Sketchbook Dares. Oh wait, I didn't flip through Sketchbook Dares. This is Sketchbook Dares. So this is my copy, which is really full of stuff. And the cover is all like beat up as it's lived. Actually, it's been to like a few continents. So yeah, my copy of the book is pretty well loved. So because I might have flipped through that earlier. So in the introduction, I mentioned how I take a more holistic approach to how I draw, because I don't always want to use the same part of me to draw with. So when I say that, I mean like sometimes I want to express an emotion, like, oh, I'm so cranky, I gotta like scribble some stuff out. And so that's more of like the emotional, I want to draw something from the heart, like I need to get something off my chest. But sometimes I more want to just practice my skills. So that's more about my hands. So that's more about getting my brain and my hands to sort of, work together. So that's like, oh, I haven't done figure drawing in a while, I should probably brush up on my skills. Rory's joining us. Rory! But then sometimes I want to do something that's, maybe I'm doing too much navel gazing. So I need to do something to get me like out of my head. So that's maybe when I'll go out in nature or draw something about my, my ancestors, or doing something that's tapping into other, maybe other cultures. But then sometimes I don't want to do any of that, and I just want to crank out just something, very like logically, like I just want to, exercise my brain. So that's more like doing stuff with lettering for me, or like drawing a map. Because sometimes I just want to be more logical. No, that's it. So when I go to draw, I think it's good to have a mixture of different directions you can go in, because also that's less likely that you're going to burn out. And that diagram is also, just to mention, based on the medicine wheel, the Native American tool for health and healing. High five, Monacan Nation. Got to give you credit for the land that I'm standing on if I'm going to talk about indigenous wisdom. So yeah, I talk about this a little bit more in the healing practices video earlier in the book tour. All right, so that's sort of an overview of like how I'll do my sketchbooks as far as inspiration. So I'm going to walk you guys through sort of a little sampling of different ones with like hands, head, heart, spirit. So that's right, it is demo time. All right, so demo time. Am I on schedule? I am on schedule. Yay. Okay. So the first dare I'm going to demonstrate to you guys is a classic warm-up. I don't have an easel or a person here to help me hold it. And Rory, can you hold this? Rory, can you come over? Can you come over here and hold it? No, he's a cat. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do my best to like prop it up like this. Okay, now for this warm-up, it's ambidextrous drawing. So that means that you draw with both of your hands. And actually, this is something that is fun to also help strengthen your non-dominant hand, because if you're like me and you sort of use your dominant hand too much for work and projects, and it's getting like a little spent, it's good to just start doing activities with your non-dominant hand, things like cleaning or lifting. So I've been turning this one into more like the manual labor hand, so I don't have to use my delicate drawing hand for that as much. Oh no, Rory's being all crazy over there. Cats. Okay, so ambidextrous drawing, it's sort of uncomfortable. Because when you're drawing with your non-dominant hand, it's like activating part of your brain that's not used to drawing. It's like, what is going on? And so I find it sort of jolts your brain awake. And so, yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to draw with both hands. So you can pull out a piece of paper. If you're drawing on a table with a loose sheet of paper, I would put a piece of tape at the top just to hold it, because if you're drawing with both hands, you can't hold down the paper with one hand. So we're going to go from the top. I'm going to go from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. And this is going to be extra challenging because it's going to be symmetrical. So symmetrical means that it's the same on both sides. So this is like a double brain concentration challenge, and it's going to look bad. Mine might not look too bad just because I've done this a lot. But yeah, it reminds you that your dominant hand is really awesome, because it also shows that you are trainable. So your left hand could be better if you actually built up that muscle memory more. Anyway, I'm getting too talky. Okay. Propping this up on my knees. So I'm going to start at the top and go to the bottom and just make 2 lines. And I'm just going to go sort of all over the place. Maybe different shapes. Is it it's abstract art. I always feel that it's like, but the pens are like ice skating on the paper. So I'm trying to let my brain relax just a little bit to like breathe into it. So you can try a couple lines just going from top to bottom, just, playing around. But then for another one, I'm going to try to do a picture, so something that actually is symmetrical. So it could be a tree, it could be a face, it could be like an insect. I guess I'll do a butterfly because I feel like butterfly is pretty cool. The trick is it's harder to get it back in place if you pick your pen up. So if you can do a continuous line drawing, that's a lot easier. So I'm gonna try my best. Let's see. I'm gonna draw a little body. Okay, yeah, you guys see. Whoa. Oh, it's kind of a it's a butterfly. Actually, when I've done workshops, people come up with like some really fun things. Now it looks like a carrot. Oh, it's fine. It's art. Yeah, so this will make you feel extra grateful to your dominant hand that it does a pretty good job. Okay, so that's a good warm up. Next drawing dare. The next drawing dare I would like to share is the Unwind Dare. Now this one I did live at the book launch party at the bridge. And so Larkin is sharing a video of that in case you want to see it. And it's actually of me drawing this. It's very meta. So the countdown, this is a countdown dare, the Unwind Dare. I designed this dare to help you loosen up because I always felt like that was a criticism that I've heard it in the past or I've given students in the past when you're like so intense and the art just looks a little tense. You're like, we need to loosen you up a bit. But how do you do that? So I find that one thing that helps me loosen up is speed and also repetition. Because if you draw something more than once, then it means that you are remembering the more visual data from one drawing to the next to the next. So it means that you have sort of a mental picture of what you're drawing better than when you first started. So that means you can sort of trust your instinct a little bit more. So maybe spending less time having to look at the object because you got the general feel of it. It's because also loosening up is about drawing more the feeling of it than maybe getting all the accurate details. So, for example, this is the first time I drew this pendant, and then this was the last time. So obviously, it's a lot looser. But also, I've lost a lot of details. So when you're forced to draw quickly and repeat, I think it's really interesting what happens in your brain because I find that then I have it memorized. So then it's easier to draw it simpler because it's hard to draw something simple. It's hard to boil it down. And also when you draw fast, you sort of outrun your critic. And so I have less time to sort of question myself and be like, well, I don't know about that. And just like, no, just go, just keep drawing. So what we're going to do is basically, I'm going to draw an object once and time it, which is, how I started here. Like, oh, I drew this pendant. But then you cut the time in half and you set a timer, you draw it again. Then you cut the time in half again and draw it again. Then you cut the time in half again and draw it again. So you don't have to fit any specific time other than just how long it takes you naturally to draw something. Let's see, I'm gonna make sure. Actually, I haven't clicked over to Facebook. Okay, I haven't had my Facebook window open because I was scared about activating the sound, but that looks, I'm just checking it real quick. Oh, it's hard. When you're by yourself to live stream and hope that it's actually going out on all these screens. Okay. So for my live Unwind Dare, let's see, I got my easel. I'm gonna set myself a timer. Okay. Now I've chosen to draw Okay, that's all right. And kind of note to self, get an easel. Okay, I'm going to draw this piggy bank as my sample object. Hello, internet. He doesn't have a name. And so for this exercise, it's good to have something that's handheld. You don't want to try to draw like an entire tree or something that's like really complicated. So something that you can hold in your hand is good for this exercise. And let's see. So for this, okay, I'm going to draw this piggy 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Normally I would use a pencil and sort of sketch a circle in each spot as a landing pad for my drawing, but I forgot my pencil. So you just saw me, I drew imaginary pencil. Don't you see it? I see it. Okay, so now I'm setting my timer and I'm just going to draw this little pig. Okay, I'm gonna hold my easel while I'm holding. God, sometimes you need an Artner. Okay. And start. Okay, so I'm gonna draw this little piggy. Okay, normally I'd do a pencil sketch, but I didn't grab one, so I'm just gonna, oh, aw, well. Okay, he's pretty proportional. Okay. So drawing his little face. So I'm like going along and drawing all these little, I'm sort of tracing over with my eye what I can see. And then copying that on the paper. Little snout. Oh. Okay, I'm being pretty slow, pretty thoughtful. Okay, so he's got this little ridge, he's got a little shirt. And actually, I'm noticing that it's kind of easier to draw an object if it's drawing it like the same size. Because then it's like I'm just moving visual data from here, there, each line. So it's pretty easy. I'm just taking my time, and I'll draw my hand. Okay, he's a little thicker, but that's fine. I was just out at the White Pig this weekend, which is a local animal sanctuary. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 10. Oh, okay. I made him. He's a little. This is a quarantine little piggy who's not getting out as much. Oh. Got a little thing there, little thing there. And okay, he's a little pig. Ta-da! It's a little pig. Okay, so that took me 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Okay, so half of that is like 1 minute 20 seconds. Okay, so I'm gonna start 1 minute 20 seconds. Oh, that's really fast. Okay, I'm starting my timer. So I'm gonna draw a piggy here in 1 minute and 20 seconds. Oh God. Oh God. Okay, and I can't see it. So I'm gonna, ideally someone would tell me a heads up of 58. Okay. The arms look like little hot dogs. Oh no. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant they look like little pigs in a blanket. Oh God, that's what they do. I'm a vegetarian, y'all. 30 seconds. So I'm still looking back and forth a lot. To copy. Oh, 18 seconds. He doesn't have a face. Oh, little Piggy. I'm sorry. Your snout has more personality than that. Stripes. Oh God. Okay. Cancel. Stop. Okay. So here's Piggy number 2. Actually, Piggy number 2 looks pretty good. I've lost little details here, but I think the line work actually looks a lot better. Okay, so now I'm going to cut that time in half. So 40 seconds. 40 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to draw a little Piggy here. 40 seconds. Artner countdown. It's the final countdown. Okay, I'm gonna, pardon me. Okay, so I'm gonna draw, this is live. Okay, 40 seconds. Go. Okay, so I definitely have more memorized. Oh God. 16 seconds. Oh, shoot. Oh, God. Okay. So he got a little taller. He's getting taller, apparently. So that was the 40-second version. He's gotten elongated. Okay, now I have 20 seconds. 20 seconds. Okay. So for this one, I'm actually just I'm gonna put him over here and just kind of, because I can't really have time to look back and forth and hold this. So I'm just going. Okay, so 20 seconds. Actually, I'm switching pens because this one is dying. Okay, 20 seconds. Sorry. Oh, I didn't start it, but I think that was 20 seconds. Shoot, I missed the climactic. Well, now I don't know if that was 20 seconds. Oh, yeah, I got the idea. Let's say, yeah, 20 seconds, yay! Oh, yeah, and hooray! We did it! Oh, that looks nice. Oh. Sparkles, sparkles! Okay. Well, thank you for joining me for this demonstration. So we got the first version, second, third, fourth. So we definitely got the difference between the first one and the fourth one is pretty big. I feel like he's definitely got a lot more he's got a lot of personality. There's a definite lightness when you have to draw fast, because then especially if you've drawn it multiple times, then you sort of can trust your muscle memory and draw more of your mental picture of it. Okay, so the Unwind Dare. Now I got to keep going. Larkin is going to share a link to the Darker Dare lesson, which is in the book about drawing your matter. So you can check the Facebook feed for that. Next. Oh, where is my Aha. Okay. My cards got out of order. Okay, next dare I want to share is the feeling dare. No, wait, actually, it's the... now I'm going to share 3 activities to do by yourself and a few variations of things to do with Artners. So, no more demos. Sorry for you, but easier for me because also I'm not really set up for demos. So, the first dare I'm going to share is called the inner critic dare. Does anybody out there have an inner critic? I bet you do. It's that little voice in your head that tells you that you suck. It's also, sometimes I call it the matter. Sometimes people call it the fraud police. That's another version. I feel like it has a lot of names. If you've ever had like a mean teacher, you know, like someone who's been critical of you, sometimes they are that voice in your head. So Mona, I draw it in Mona as the record player, which I should have marked, but I didn't. It's this sort of record player telling her all these like loud things in her head. In this activity, I like it because it is more word art than technical drawing. So it's less about being the best artist and more about journaling, actually. So for this activity, you start off by making 2 lists. So one side are all the put downs that your inner critic tells you. And I would write these as you statements, because when I feel like my critic is talking to me, they're saying like, you can't do that. And then, so for example, it's like, you know, who do you think you are? Or you can't do it, or you're selfish, or you should give up, or blah, 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 you. But then you do a second list of like sort of flipping them almost like a hollow back situation. And I call these the pep talks. So these are more I statements. So it's like, I've got this, like, I have something to say, like, you know, I. And so I feel like I might not believe all the stuff in the pep talk column, but I can't erase what my critic says. But what I can do is I can sort of talk over them. I can reprogram. So first I'll start off by just journaling 2 lists. And when I've done this exercise with students before, it's always interesting that the girls have really long lists. The boys generally don't have a lot on their inner critic list. So I don't know if that means that the girls have more, are just absorbing more negativity and internalizing it, or they're just more in tune with what they're thinking inside their head. So I don't know, it's just an observation. So then what you're gonna do is draw speech bubbles, or you could draw it, you know, and draw like a shape of your head, like one of those old style silhouette portraits, and then fill the inside with text, but putting in there the content of what your critic is saying, all the put downs, like that you are terrible, why are you? But I wrote it with light colored pencils, because then what you're going to do is draw on top of it, do some layering with darker colors of what your pep talk is saying. So my critic, he still has like the speech bubbles in there, but now they're harder to see because I'm like visually yelling over it with the more positive statements. And then I sort of, I don't know, just to make it more artistic, I actually went in and then sort of created shading around the top layer so it really sort of came forward in the picture. And here's another version of it, because I've done this at like workshops a bunch of times. But see, on the screen, you can probably only see the positive and you can't even notice the stuff that is in the background. But I've seen people be really creative with this, like, you know, do it as like a brain. So it's because really it's a visual representation of the stuff that's going on in your mind. So, yeah, so I feel like it's good to, shine a light on your inner critic. This is how I drew it in a sample page for Sketchbook Dares, like an old version. So here's like my genius shining a light on my critic, who's just like, hey, you know, who do you think you are? Like this guy is just like, you suck. Yeah, so my peanut gallery. But yeah, if you shine a light on what they're saying, then you might realize like, oh, that's not right. Okay, the next activity to share is the breakthrough dare. Breakthrough. This one is about getting through the 80% wall. The 80% wall is something that I just noticed that artists hit when they're about 80% into a project where it's almost done, but you just don't quite know how to finish it. Or maybe you get bored with it and then you abandon it because you got a shiny new idea and you're like, oh, I'd rather do this instead. And then you just don't finish it. And then you end up with a pile of 80% done projects. And so I want to design an activity to help overcome that because it's a really big common problem. And so I noticed that part of what made me hit that wall is because I would be so emotionally attached to my original idea in my head. And so if the art didn't quite match what my original idea was, I'd feel sort of let down, like, oh, in my head, you were so much better. You're such a disappointment. But I would be so scared I would be so scared of, oh shoot, I'm like totally, okay, what am I trying to thought? I would be scared to mess it up. And so I would almost rather abandon it than actually take a risk of messing it up. So really it's about risk. When you hit that wall, it's because you are scared. And your fear is getting in the way of hearing what you really want to do because your little genius is there whispering in your ear like, oh, you should try this, but you can't hear it because that fear is like, don't mess it up. So for this dare, I challenge you to draw something that you're not as emotionally attached to. Because when you're really emotionally attached to it, like, oh, I'm drawing a picture of my mom, I want it to really look like her because it's going to mean a lot. And you're like, oh, it's got to be perfect. But for this, draw something you don't like, and then it's easier to practice taking risks with it. So I dare you to make a list of food you don't like, because we don't need to be like channeling negativity on other human beings right now. People got enough. But food, we can play with food. So make a list of the food you don't like, then pick the most visually interesting one and do a portrait of it. So I picked licorice because I really don't like licorice. I don't get it, but it's really pretty. So for this exercise, draw a portrait of your food. And when you're sort of at that 80% wall where you're sort of like, it's pretty good, maybe it's done, I don't know, go take a walk. Here's my little 4-part diagram. So that's when I'll take a break, walk it off, and I'll actually use anger to help me quiet the fears. I'll be like, oh, this artwork's just terrible. Like, oh, in my head, it was so good. And when I come back to it, I was like, well, it's so ruined anyway. We might as well try blank. Rory, no, don't get in there. No. He's going to attack my streamers. Oh, bad boy. Because I also, at this point, will do what I call re-see. Re-see is when I come back and look at my art with fresh eyes after taking a break, walking away from it, and try to look at it again as just pure visual data, something that I'm not emotionally attached to, something that I'm like, well, I've put so many hours into this. So I try to trick myself to see it fresh. And so to re-see is when you look at it from far away, so like across the room, or if you look at it in a mirror, so it's backwards, or if you look at it upside down, or if you take a photo of it and look at the photo, or if you squint your eyes, because, you see artists do that. They're like, ooh. So these are ways that you can trick yourself to re-see what you're working on. And then normally I'll get some zany idea. Like what I did with this one was I added a banner onto it. So I basically added, and it says, you make me want to barf. So I put in a joke because a risk, it could be anything from changing a background, taking out an element, adding an element, layering something else on top of it. Okay, this cat, you are driving me crazy. Okay, so that is the breakthrough dare. The the next one is the feeling dare. I'm going to go through real fast because now I'm like running out of time. So I'm going to go through the next cluster really quickly. So the feeling dare is when you draw a portrait of your eyes and you're picking shapes and designs to reflect different emotions. So first you think about what emotion you'd like to illustrate, and then create different designs and shapes that you associate with that emotion, and then figure out how, go. Oh my goodness, sorry about that. And then do a portrait of just the eyes, where you're using those shapes either on the inside, maybe they're radiating outside. My extra challenge with this would be perhaps add a face mask underneath it, because I think doing a portrait of the eyes right now is even more timely, because when we're interacting with each other, we can't read the rest of the face. You can only see people's eyes. So here's definitely a little Artner challenge for you, pandemic inspired. Another, and finally, just a couple things. Oh, and if you do that exercise, take photo reference of yourself, so that way you can sort of act with your eyes and really like amplify the emotion and almost like exaggerate it. So yeah, use yourself as a model or a friend. Okay, lastly, I would like to share just a couple Artner possibilities, because drawing by yourself in a sketchbook is cool, but in my sketchbook, there's a ton of drawing games. So a drawing game, oh gosh, there's like a whole bunch in this section. This is a classic when I travel. So these are drawing games where, here's like another one, where you start off with writing a word, and then you just take turns turning each letter into a picture. So it's a really fun game. My friend Matt Mikus first sort of got me into it, and then I went in another direction, and it's sort of, I don't know, it's been played in a lot of countries with a lot of different people. So sometimes it's been, oh, here's like a close-up. So by the end, it just looks like a crazy drawing. So oftentimes we'll pick a theme. This is one on like a whiteboard. I think it's best when the images interact with each other. So if we were doing this live, I would do it as a group and invite you guys to come up, but yeah, we can't do that on the internet. So moving on. Other Artner drawing activity that's my favorite is silent partner drawing, where you guys don't talk and you just pass the paper between you two, and just take turns doing shapes and lines. I think it's good to do that one non-objective, so just shapes and lines and colors, not trying to make like a picture. So it's like a visual conversation. And then the third way I would challenge you to Artner with your sketchbook or other creative projects right now during isolation is to mail it back and forth. So if you have like if you have a traveling sketchbook, so let's say I would draw a page and then I would mail it to my Artner, Lauren Larkin, up in Vermont, and then they would fill out a few pages, they'd mail it back to me. So I feel like there's potential for that sort of Artnering right now. And let's see. Okay, now I keep trying to get out of order. Okay, lastly, I'm going to do is give some advice about starting or maintaining your own sketchbook practice, especially right now. Because maybe you don't have the mental capacity to write the next American novel, but maybe you just feel like, drawing out fun quotes that you like. So yeah, sketchbook, you can do it however you like. So my advice for working in a sketchbook, let's see, first I'll share my top 10 prompts. I made this before I made Sketchbook Dares, which features 48 of my favorite drawing activities. So just me personally, these are my top 10 like go-to prompts for like, I want to draw something, but I don't know what to do. So of course, because I'm me, I draw an emotion or a feeling because I do art therapy on myself, but then also drawing a quote or a song lyric. I spilled water on here, and why I use water-soluble markers for make this sign, I don't know. Draw someone or something from reality. Pets are good, especially if they're sleepy ones. Draw about a book you've just read. Draw a song abstractly. That's actually a lesson in the book, The Music Dare, because I love drawing music. Play with kids' art materials, so like crayons, finger paint. I feel like sometimes you forget that they're really fun and awesome. But if you have kids, you probably have rediscovered it. But if you don't, then come on back and make some, paper mache or whatnot. Okay, don't draw, make a collage. Collage is really good if you want to be creative, but you don't feel too focused, because then you can just more sort of curate a bunch of images, cut them up, and physically move them around. Drawing a natural or found object. So if you get outside and do a hike and come across a cool leaf or pine cone, take it home and, draw it from like a 360. Draw or mock a recent memory, because it's always great to make funny little comics about, bad things or hard things. And then play a drawing game with an Artner. Here, I'll hold that up again in case I want to get like a screenshot. Okay. And other advice, I encourage you to make a to-draw list. I have a Post-it note on my planner, and it's the to-draw list. And what I have written on there is just when I have an idea for something that would be cool, because it's like, oh, a yin yang moon, yeah, that would be cool to draw. So I'll just put it on the list. And so that way, if I'm uninspired and have no ideas, then I sort of have a little queue of ideas. And let's see, I would encourage you to create office hours if you really want to have a sketchbook project, an ongoing commitment. So picking like a couple, I feel like a 3-hour chunk is ideal, but you don't always get 3 hours. So maybe just like 2-hour chunk. Maybe it's just an hour. But designating specific time to work on it, or giving yourself a goal or a quota or something tangible to sort of hold yourself accountable. And also share it with an Artner or other people like in your support system. Because when other people are emotionally involved in our creative practice, then they're more likely to be supportive and understanding and encourage us to keep up with it. Like, oh, hey, how's that, how did that new piece turn out? So include them in it. And yeah, I find that they can help me stay motivated even when I'm not totally motivated. And lastly, I want to share an awesome resource, which is the Brooklyn Art Library, the Sketchbook Project. It is where there's just, I don't even know, thousands, millions, trillions of sketchbooks, maybe not trillions. They have the world's largest collection of artist sketchbooks, and you can explore their library digitally online. Or if you have a sketchbook and you want to submit it to their collection, you can do that. So it's just, so if you really want to go down the sketchbook rabbit hole, and I visited there a few years ago when I was in New York. And so Larkin's going to share a video of me just sharing a few of those sketchbooks. And let's see. Okay. I'm going to flip over to the Facebook. Oh, come on, some things. So if anyone has any questions, please chime in. And if you liked these prompts, I would encourage you to check out my book of Sketchbook Dares, which you can buy on my website, whoislauralee.com. And you can also snag a copy of Mona, the latest book baby. And let's see, to wrap things up, I have a few things to share and some upcoming announcements. So, yay, announcements! Just startled Rory. So first, I would like to share my secret rainbow on this dress. Okay, can I stand down here? I'll stand down here. Oh, can you see my adorable rainbow dress? Oh my god. This is by Savaha, which is actually an Artner sponsor. I know, who knew we had Artner sponsors? So Savaha is an awesome female-owned, steam-powered clothing line based in Northern Virginia, where I'm from. And it's all really fun clothes, and they all have pockets, which is awesome. And I actually used some of their designs as inspiration for clothing in Mona because they were nice enough to do a little trade with me. So if you're in need of, want to support a local business and get some STEM and STEAM inspired Geek Girl Levin clothes, then please check them out. And I've been wearing magical shoes on this tour. And since I can't wear them in person to show them off, I'll show off this week's magic shoes. Oh God, how do I show them? How do I show them? But they are street art. They have street art on them. Here, I'll just hold them up. But they're made by my friend Peek in New York. Aren't they cool? So these are my magic shoes today. I don't wear them outside of the house because they are airbrushed and made by hand. So I just thought I would share my magic shoes and upcoming videos. Next, I'm doing a conversation with Amber Loyacano about the dark matter of Mona Starr. So this is coming up on May 14th at noon. So this will be fun. I think it's going to be on Facebook Live. There's a link and it has the info on the stuff and stuff. Then I also have a mindful art workshop coming up with the Fralin Museum of Art. Ooh, ah. This is a virtual version of a workshop I did right before pandemic. So I'm adapting it for a virtual experience. So it'll be like a little shorter, but that's going to be June 5th at 5:30 to 7. And of course, the big thing I have coming up, comic camps. Because I teach comic camps every summer at McGuffey Art Center. Hold on this side. But this year, obviously, I can't do it in person. So I've been scheming a virtual version that's going to be really fun, where you get snail mail with some of the supplies that we'll be using to make it a little more interactive. And it's going to be, and so here's the dates. So I'm going to work with 8 and 11-year-olds, one session in June, another in July. And then with the 12 to 15-year-olds, there's a June session and a July session. So I'm going to be posting all this info on my website and my blog next week. And let's see, as I wrap up, I want to say final thank you to Lauren Larkin-Scuderi for helping me out with these videos the past 8 weeks. I couldn't have done it without you. Mwah! And there'll be more videos in the future, so stay tuned. And if you've enjoyed these videos and would like to give a tip or a donation to support a little working artist, author, who really has only broken even on this tour and not really made much profit, I would appreciate if you've liked them, if you'd like to give a small something, and really anything is helpful. So here's my Venmo and PayPal info if you want to help. Send a little something. And lastly, I guess, yeah, thank you so much for joining me on this virtual book tour adventure. It's been interesting to learn all this live in front of you, and I hope that you've had fun. And if you've liked this video, please consider sharing, liking, and all of that jazz. So I guess we're at the end of our hour. So I want to wish you all a beautiful and inspired rest of your day. May you be well, and may you be weird. And may you have lots of color.